We've been married for 3 years now. My husband stepped into the role of president after his father, a man he deeply admired and respected, decided to retire. Having worked diligently under his father's guidance, he was thrilled to be appointed as his successor. Alongside, I also worked part-time at the same company, a position my father-in-law helped me secure. On the day my husband Henry was officially appointed, we celebrated together, committing to support each other wholeheartedly in this new chapter. A year into his presidency, I took on the roles of both his secretary and accountant. I decided to stand by Henry, assisting him as he navigated his demanding schedule. Although juggling these dual responsibilities was challenging, I remained committed to ensuring everything ran smoothly. However, as time passed, Henry began to change. The humility he once possessed was replaced by a growing arrogance linked to his new position. He increasingly spent his days entertaining guests and playing golf, leaving the bulk of office paperwork to me. On numerous occasions, he would conveniently claim he was unavailable, delegating his responsibilities to other executives. This arrogance spilled over into his personal life as well. He started spending only a couple of days a week at home, often claiming business trips or client entertainment obligations that were hard to verify from the vague details in the receipts I handled. My suspicions about his whereabouts grew. The warm, loving husband I knew seemed to have disappeared, replaced by someone who rarely even offered me a smile. We had been married for 3 years, but the warmth between us had given way to condescending glances and a chill in the air. Around us, murmurs of dissatisfaction among the employees grew louder, criticizing Henry's increasingly self-serving behavior. There was a real concern that if this continued, the stability of the company, carefully built by my father-in-law, might falter. I knew these concerns were valid, yet I didn't want to fuel the tension any further. Amidst this, I tried to offer some reassurance to our colleagues, hoping that Henry's recent arrogance was temporary. He's just going through a phase, I would say, clinging to the belief that he would return to the diligent president he once was. I wanted to believe it was just a rough patch. Then one day I returned home to find the front door unlocked and an unfamiliar pair of women's shoes in the entryway. A wave of dread washed over me, but I pushed the door open and entered the living room. There, a young woman appeared, who seemed just as surprised to see me. "Are you Henry's wife?" she asked casually, admitting she had borrowed his key to pick up some clothes for him. She was casually packing a travel bag with Henry's belongings as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My confusion and fear turned to anger as I confronted her. "Where are you taking my husband's clothes, and why do you have our house key?" The questions tumbled out before I could temper them. My heart raced as the reality of the situation began to set in. She shrugged off my grip with unsettling ease, her words cutting deeper than I was prepared for. "Henry says I'm better than you. I'm young, have a bright future, and am beautiful. He hardly ever comes home now, does he? Well, he's not planning to." Her blunt admission left me reeling, the foundation of our marriage and the life I knew suddenly seeming like a fragile illusion. He had invaded my sanctuary, my own home, using words that stung. "You're just an incompetent old woman," she parroted, as if reciting a script he had written. "Stay miserably at home, wait for a husband who never shows up, eat your dinner alone." Her laughter, nasal and mocking, only twisted the knife further. This was Henry's other woman, reveling in her cruelty, echoing the disdain he seemingly harbored for me behind closed doors. Henry's choice left much to be desired. Her attire, makeup, and the timing of her visit all hinted at her possibly being a nightclub hostess. I don't mean to demean anyone working in nightlife. Those who do often carry themselves with a dignity born of hard experience. But her demeanor and her coarse language betrayed a lack of the very education and decorum that define the best in any field. Was she merely a young woman misguided by her youthful arrogance? Anger and sadness surged through me, but as they ebbed, I found myself enveloped in a calm dismay over Henry's foolishness. She vanished almost as quickly as she had appeared, leaving behind her sharp words, reminding me unnecessarily of our age difference. Henry at 37, myself at 28. What was he thinking, disparaging a wife 9 years his junior? Determined to erase any trace of her presence, I began cleaning the house. After a brief hiatus, I returned to work with a large bag in tow. My colleagues, surprised yet supportive, greeted me warmly. With a nod of thanks, I bypassed them and headed straight to the president's office, ready to face whatever came next. "Hey, you're late," Henry snapped as the clock struck 9. I had arrived an hour later than expected, but I refrained from pointing out that he too was often not punctual. His tone was sharp, and I sensed an argument brewing, so I chose silence over confrontation, placing my large bag on the couch instead. "What's that?" he asked, eyeing the bag suspiciously. "That's your stuff," I replied. "I moved the bigger items to your parents' place. Since it seemed like you weren't planning to come back, I went ahead and canceled the lease." Henry was upset by the sudden change, but we were in the office, so I urged him to keep his voice down. In truth, I had hoped we could support each other indefinitely, and it saddened me to see things unravel. "You've changed a lot since becoming president," I told him. "I left the house we shared, filled with our memories, in hopes that maybe it might bring back the real you." I expressed a faint hope that he might see his missteps, even if just a bit. "I wish we could go back to being the couple we once were," I said, harboring a mix of hope and resignation. Yet, despite my hopes, Henry had started bringing the other woman into the office, introducing her to his employees as a business partner. She came and went freely about 5 times a week. Each time she visited, I found myself serving her tea, maintaining professionalism despite the personal turmoil. Having to bow to her each time she visited was profoundly humiliating. Her attire and makeup seemed far too extravagant for someone who was merely a business partner. Whispers around the office suggested she was more than that, perhaps the boss's mistress. These rumors intensified, making my position at the company increasingly uncomfortable. Eventually, I was summoned to the president's office. There, Henry casually introduced her as his girlfriend. She gave me a smug look, clearly enjoying my discomfort. I managed to keep my composure, avoiding her gaze. "So, you're admitting to adultery?" I asked Henry in the calmest tone I could muster, even as I suppressed the urge to raise my voice. "Are you jealous? It has nothing to do with you," he retorted. Then he announced plans to use our savings for a startup, displaying a familiar bank book, the one I had been saving in, hoping to open my grocery store one day. "Why do you have that? Give it back," I demanded, but he dismissed me. "She found it when she went to get my things. And listen, disobey me and we're done. Divorced," he threatened. "What you're doing is theft. You can't just enter someone's house and steal their bank book," I argued, glaring at both of them. In response, Henry slapped a set of divorce papers against my cheek, already filled out. "Why don't you say something, huh?" I had reached my limit. Snatching the divorce papers from his hand, I filled them out right there and handed them back immediately. He hadn't expected me to comply so readily. His confident demeanor shifted to one of surprise, while the woman quickly took the papers from my hand, perhaps shocked at my resolve to end things so decisively. In that heated moment, I snatched the bank book back from Henry. "This is for my future, the one I've worked tirelessly for. Do you want a divorce? I'm all for it, but what you've done here is criminal, and I will never forgive you for it," I declared. Henry's anger flared up in response. "You know you'll be fired from here too. You were just a part-timer. She can do your job even better," he sneered, dismissing my contributions. But his words no longer hurt me. I was beyond caring about his taunts. Completely disillusioned, I walked out of the president's office, leaving him behind. Strangely, Henry left on a trip the very next day and was absent from work. Seizing the opportunity, I submitted my resignation and left the company for good. Then I headed to the new company founded by my father-in-law. He had always valued my work, even during my part-time days, and had previously suggested I work with him instead of at Henry's company. I had declined at the time, wanting to support Henry, but now circumstances had changed. Upon discussing the divorce and my career situation, my father-in-law welcomed me warmly into his company. "Welcome to the office," he greeted, offering me a full-time position. Working under his leadership, a leader who genuinely cared for his employees, was refreshing and fulfilling. I quickly adapted to the supportive and comfortable work environment, appreciating his way of treating staff with respect and kindness, something I had always admired. I often thought about the employees still at Henry's company, feeling a pang of sympathy for them enduring his leadership. Then, one day, to my surprise, Henry showed up at our office. He looked drastically different, thin and worn out. His father, noticing his condition, promptly escorted him to the president's office for a private discussion. "Please, I was wrong about everything. Come back to my company," Henry pleaded, clutching at me in desperation. Just then, my father-in-law stepped in, pulling him away gently but firmly. "Do you finally appreciate the wife you discarded? And now you recognize her skills as an employee too? It's too late," he said sternly. Then, turning away from Henry, my father-in-law called out to a group entering the room. They were the managers from Henry's company. "These folks will be working here starting today," he announced. Henry's face went pale, a look of confusion and shock overtaking him as he stammered, asking why this was happening. My father-in-law didn't hold back. "I've heard all about it. How you pushed your responsibilities onto your subordinates, failed to earn their trust, and misused company resources, and about the bank book incident with Lena. No action was taken because you swept it under the rug with money." He continued, "You handed Lena's job, which you belittled as mere part-time work, to your new girlfriend. She couldn't handle it, and because of her incompetence, your business partners terminated their contracts with you. You're in a precarious position now, but I have no intention of bailing you out. I won't jeopardize my valued employees' careers. These people chose to come here on their own. Even your current secretary has resigned," he added. "You've orchestrated this downfall yourself. There's nothing more you can do. You should be ashamed of your past actions." As the reality of his situation sank in, Henry stood in the middle of the room, the gravity of the turn of events dawning on him. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for him at that moment. As my father-in-law rightly pointed out, Henry had brought this upon himself, so there was little anyone could do to help. "Mr. President, thank you for your guidance during my short tenure. I expressed gratitude to those in management who, despite the failures at the top, maintained their professionalism until the very end." Watching his former subordinates handle the situation with such decorum, I wondered if Henry, now reluctant to leave, would finally take a moment to reflect on his actions. Sadly, a few months later, Henry's company declared bankruptcy. With no company to run and abandoned by the woman he had been with, Henry was left to navigate a meager existence, relying on his father-in-law's charity. In the meantime, I pursued legal action against the woman who had caused so much turmoil. Known only as Ms. Emma, she had taken possession of funds not rightfully hers. Fortunately, the law was on my side, and I successfully reclaimed the stolen money without further complications. Ms. Emma, now on her own, attempted to find new victims to exploit. However, her reputation caught up with her, and she faced multiple lawsuits from other women she had deceived. With no one to cover her debts and having been dismissed from the hostess club where she worked, she resorted to theft. Ultimately, her desperate actions led to her arrest, and she began a new chapter behind bars. As for myself, amidst the chaos and challenges, I found a way to move forward, focusing on rebuilding and finding stability in a new environment, far from the turmoil of Henry's failed leadership and the shadow of his downfall. Since then, things have taken a positive turn for me. My father-in-law, recognizing my dedication and capabilities, offered me a chance to manage a new venture, a revolving grocery store. "I'd like to put you in charge of it. Do you want to try it?" he proposed. Excited by the opportunity, I eagerly accepted, "Yes, I would love to. Please let me try." 5 months ago, I transitioned to this new role within a company spearheaded by my father-in-law. It was the start of an ambitious project, with plans to open a chain of general merchandise stores nationwide. It was a dream opportunity that materialized unexpectedly. Managing the first store was no small feat. From the grand opening to attracting and retaining customers, every step was challenging. However, I am deeply grateful for the support from my friends and the trust my father-in-law placed in me. Their belief in my abilities fueled my determination. Now, as I stand in front of the store as its manager, I feel a profound sense of pride. I'm finally doing what I've always wanted, running my store, a dream that has now become a reality. As we aim to expand nationwide, my days are bustling and rewarding. I can truly say that I am happy, facing each day with optimism and ready to tackle any challenges that might come my way. This journey has not only led to a fulfilling career, but also brightened my future, showing me the resilience of starting anew.